Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with great recent recordings of the classics. And I have a particularly fascinating case to talk about. It's this Vadim Gluzman doing Bruch's Violin Concerto, along with his Romance in F major and the String Quartet in A minor from 1918, Opus Posthumus. And it's a lovely work, too. This disc encapsulates much of where the virtuoso violin repertoire is heading as we traipse through the new millennium. Thank you. Gluzman is a fantastic violinist. He's a wonderful virtuoso with a gorgeous tone and chops to burn. Now, the Bruch Violin Concerto is a work that seems to be a lot less frequently encountered than it used to be. Part of the reason may be that it's a little bit too easy for today's virtuosi, maybe. I don't know. They tend to like to do Prokofiev and Shostakovich and Walton and people like that. Do they? Or are they still just doing Sibelius and Tchaikovsky and Beethoven and Brahms? Well, they're certainly doing a lot of Brahms. Everyone's always doing a lot of Brahms, aren't they? But the Bruch, well, it was once standard stuff. It was always the couplings on disc were always Mendelssohn and Bruch on the same disc, the same recording, the same CD. Well, now it's kind of become detached from its former partner. They've had a divorce, and it's played separately. And that's fine. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful work. I mean, when you listen to it, one of the things that Tovey, the great musicologist and critic Donald Francis Tovey, said about the Bruch Concerto is that, whether or not you like it or dislike it, it becomes most noble just at the place where other concertos become trashy and vulgar. That is the second subject of the finale, which Tovey describes in most romantic concertos as a lamentable episode. Well, it's actually true. And it's an absolutely lovely work. I mean, it's got the tune from that Strauss stole in his Alpine Symphony. Da 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 da, etc. That's in the slow movement. And it does have, as I said, a very interesting form, a fiery and passionate prelude, which is not in the standard sonata form at all, and it isn't very long. And then, of course, the zippy finale. The problem may be that the work is only about 25 minutes, 24 minutes and 17 seconds here, as performed by Gluzman with the Bergen Philharmonic under the redoubtable Andrew Litton on Bis. That could be part of the issue. I don't know. But it's very, very interesting to note that performances of this work, at least the most recent ones that I've heard, have all been very good. It's a piece that is almost surefire as a success. It's had just zillions of really fine performances. This particular example was recorded in 2011, so it's about 14 years old. It's definitely makes the cut for a recent performance after the year 2000. The interesting thing is the coupling. To do an all Bruch CD was always considered a little bit risky because Bruch was a one-shot wonder. The Violin Concerto was the only thing anyone cared about, along with that short cello piece he did, the Kol Nidra. And that was it for Bruch. He wrote a lot of music, and he lived from 1938 to 1920. Long, long life, full of very attractive but extremely conservative music. His symphonies were not terribly successful, and so he never had much of a reputation. In his lifetime, he was known in Germany for his choral works. He wrote big choral works, The Song of the Bell and Odysseus. Leon Botstein did Odysseus with the American Symphony, and I went to see it. I have never been so bored. It's a total snooze fest. He was absolutely the German avatar of the dreariest, droopiest English oratorio tradition of the 19th century. He really was. But, that aside, his chamber music is often gorgeous. Quite often. He did a lot of Swedish dances for things and Swedish themes for some reason, and they're very attractive. He wrote 3 violin concertos, and actually they're good pieces. not just the first. They're lovely works, although nothing quite took off like this did. And of course, the Scottish Fantasy, which is a wonderful work. I think it's one of the great violin works ever, and probably greater than the concerto here, actually. All things considered. But and it's a big concerto length work. It's extraordinary. But I don't think it's never going to get that kind of attention, unfortunately, and it doesn't get played at all anymore. Really kind of puzzling. But it seems to me that when violinists do take up the Bruch, they do it justice. And you don't hear, it's also very, very interesting, despite his conservatism as a German composer, you do not see period instrument people running around saying, oh, let's do Bruch without vibrato, especially the Violin Concerto. Could you imagine such a thing? For all that the period instrument movement is trying to stake its claim to like Beethoven and Brahms, the classicizing people, the more classically oriented composers where they think they have some sort of, legitimacy. Of course, it's nonsense, but they think they do. When it comes to the virtuoso repertoire, I mean, you don't see Wieniawski on period instruments. You don't see Isai on period instruments, or happening the same way that you do with those other composers. And I really doubt we're going to see Bruch or Sibelius or any of those, composers who grew up in the virtuoso violin school of the late 19th century. I just do not see them partaking of the authenticity movement, which begs a very interesting question, doesn't it? Which is, what are those people doing if they think it's authentic? Were there actually two schools, one that was full of color and warmth and things like that, and another one that was cold and steely and horrible? There were different schools of violin playing, and there were different schools in their approach to vibrato and ornamentation and other things like that. There's no question about that. But the issue is, what are the parameters? Was Joachim still playing the Bruch, which was written for him, remember, and premiered and championed by him in exactly the same way that Baroque composers played the Bach Violin Concerti? Somehow I doubt it. And in any case, all of which leads me to believe that Bruch is in good hands as we enter the 21st century. And this is a very telling example, a lovely disc. And also, by the way, a disc that we, with a programmatic concept that we see much more frequently. That is a big orchestral work married to chamber music. And I think the reason for that is, well, money. I mean, you can throw together a performance of a single concerto, but sometimes doing two of them on one disc can be prohibitively expensive or difficult, or it depends on whether or not the performers are actually doing the work. And then how do you fill up the rest of the disc? And for that reason, we sometimes get some very, very nice couplings, but they're not, going to be big sellers, in the sense that the great virtuosi of the past, like Heifetz doing Mendelssohn and Bruch, or Tchaikovsky and Bruch, and something in Bruch. It means Bruch is going to be Bruch-like. He's going to be by himself, and we have to learn to appreciate him for who he was, which was a composer of considerable gifts. On evidence here, beautiful performances. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.